everybody, it's Adam and welcome to my studio. Really excited to be doing this video. We are finally doing a studio tour. I moved into this studio about 6 months ago. Before then, I was just making everything inside my apartment, which was cool, but it was getting a little bit too much. It was kind of a headache. So I was really excited to be able to kind of quit my day job, get a full studio, and turn my kind of like hobby for art and ceramics into a career, which is crazy to me. I never thought that would be possible. So I feel really grateful that could happen. But this is my studio. It's not very big. It's about 400 square feet and it's inside the Bridgeport Art Center. The Bridgeport Art Center is this like big multi-use building in Bridgeport, which is a neighborhood and kind of like the south side of Chicago. It's a little bit south of Pilsen and a little bit west of Chinatown. It's a cool neighborhood. I love my studio. I have lots of good natural light, big windows. There's definitely the studio is mostly set up at this point. I'm really happy with it. There's a couple places in the studio where I might want to add a little more storage or kind of finalize it a little bit neater, but I think we're mostly there at this point. So we'll start with the throwing section of my studio. If you watch my TikToks or my shorts or see me on Instagram, you probably are most familiar with this part of my studio. It's where I do most of my filming for my throwing. So for my wheels, I've got 3 wheels and they're all Shimpo RK Whispers. That's the model. I really like these wheels. I think everyone who throws kind of have a wheel preference, and this isn't there's lots of good wheels out there. These are just the wheels I've kind of picked. The things I like about them is they're really compact. I like that they're small. I like the splash pan. I like how the pedal also has a little arm on it so you can use your hand. I think that's just cool. And I like wheels that when they're off, you can be like a banding wheel, so the top just freely spins. I love it. And I've got 3 of them. And they all kind of sit around this table, and I wanted to build a table that had good cable management so I could keep the cables off the ground, and I plug them all into this little outlet that's on the table. I built a table, but it's nothing fancy. It's just 2x4s and dimensional lumber, but it works really good for me because it's the same width as my wear boards, so I can just put a wear board down on my table and I can throw, or if I don't want the wear board, I can use it for tools. It's really multi-purpose, and I wanted there to be a space in the center because since I do a lot of filming, I have wires running sometimes to charge my camera or my phone. So I made the table myself because it was easier to make it than to find one. And then since I have hardwood floors, I have these just office mats for rolling chairs. I got 3 of them, and I just put them on the ground to kind of protect the hardwoods near the wheel because sometimes you splash. And then I lift my wheels up on 2x4s. I just use 2x4s because they're you can stack them up and it lifts your wheel higher. And I just lifted it until it was a height I was happy with. And then the stools, these are from IKEA. I'm pretty sure most of you probably recognize these stools, but the stools are just IKEA stools. They're very affordable. I think they're I don't know what they are because inflation's, everything keeps getting expensive, but I remember them being I want to say $15, so they're really reasonable. And I just have a lot of them, and you can stack them, and they're very handy in a studio. And that's also the throwing mirror I always use. That's an IKEA mirror, and I feel every potter I see has that same mirror. So I feel it's the unwritten Pottery mirror. And then you use the mirror when you throw because it's nice to see the side profile of your piece, and the mirror lets you do that without leaning over. I feel a lot of good pottery practice is just kind of coming up with a system that you feel comfortable when you're throwing, because if you don't, you get all these back problems, and it's no good. But the wheels, I said one thing I liked about them is they have a nice splash pan. They have those clips that just pop right off. You can pull the splash pan off and empty them out. I use one for trimming and one for throwing, and I do that to kind of separate my wet from my dry. So whenever I want to trim, I just hop on my trimming wheel, and if I want to throw, I use my throwing wheel. It's nice to do that. And I also have 3 wheels. I got 3 wheels because originally I had thought at one point I might do like small private classes where I wanted to have like an instructor wheel and then like a couples class or like a partner or whatever. And that's why I got 3 wheels. But I only really use 2 because I use one for my trimming and one for my throwing. Maybe some point in the future I'll do like small private classes, but I haven't decided to do that yet. But I've got the 3rd wheel if I decide to do that. Okay, but moving on from my wheel, I kind of near my windows it's where I kind of just do my clay storage. So I've got my boxes of throwing clay, and then I also have plaster and other little things there. There's nothing super special or fun about this, but one thing I do, which maybe is useful for people, is I put all my kind of materials on top of 2x4s, and I do this because I wet mop and I clean the floors a lot, and I don't want the cardboard to get wet and break down. So putting it on top of the 2x4s is really handy, and it just kind of keeps it elevated so it doesn't get wet. And cleaning is such a big part of running like a neat pottery studio. But moving on from the wheels onto stuff that's a little bit less practical but makes me really happy is lighting. I've got a lot of diffuse lighting in my space. I really like a space with good natural lighting and like good diffuse lighting. I've got kind of 2 methods of diffuse lighting. I've got this little bar that sits on my windowsill, and it's from hay. It's kind of just for the vibes. It doesn't, it's not very practical, but I like it because I can see it from the street. So I can kind of like look up at the building like, oh yeah, that's my studio. I like it. It's just, I almost always leave it on. And then the other things I have in the studio are the big paper lanterns. They're also from hay, and I really like these. They give a lot of nice diffuse light to a space. And I put kind of warmer LED bulbs in them, like the brightest, warmest LEDs I could find. And it's nice. And I have like uplights or whatever, like room lights, but I use them when I film, and I use them at night if it needs to be really bright. But if it doesn't need to be so bright, I like to turn them off and just have my ambient lighting. And then it's not quite lighting, but I think it's kind of tied to it, is the big curtains I have. I made these myself. I went to Joann Fabrics and bought like yards of kind of sheer fabric, and I just installed wires on my ceiling and put little rings on one end of the fabric. And it's like, my ceilings are like 12 feet, so they're pretty long, but I really like them because I can move them back and forth, and they help break up the space and kind of diffuse that like bright sunlight that comes into my studio, which is really nice for filming, and just, it's like a pleasant place to be. And then I also, the one in the very back, I use it to hide stuff. I'm gonna eventually do shelves, but I kind of just stack up a bunch of packing materials back there. And at one point, I'm gonna put proper shelves in there, but for now, it's good enough. Now moving on to what I'm sitting on, the work tables. I feel like every good space, you have to have like a really good work table. It's super important in a pottery studio to have a good work table, because anything you don't do on a wheel, you're probably doing at your work table, and there's a lot of stuff that you do. And a big work table, it just feels, I don't know, it's like, I would say it's the heart of my studio, but that's not true. That's my kiln. It's like, I don't know, it's like an important aspect of my studio is the table, and I built it myself. I built most of it. The tabletop is a butcher block that I bought from Menards, and it was a little expensive. The butcher block I think was like, I want to say like $280. It's a 3x6 like solid 1.5 inch butcher block. It is very sturdy, and I really like the butcher block. You want, with pottery stuff, you want a non-sealed surface, because it kind of needs to act as a sponge to suck out moisture when you're wedging or doing stuff on top of it. So I like the butcher block. I used to work on plywood top, and the plywood will splinter over time, and it's just not quite as nice. It's a lot cheaper, but I definitely don't regret buying the butcher block. And then the rest of it is a 2x4 assembly. And I know you've already saw, but it's not actually attached. I didn't ever attach the bottom to the top. I could, but it's so heavy that I don't think it really needs to, and it doesn't really slide around when I use it. But the construction has got the just 2x4s, and you can see in the video how the table is assembled. Just 2x4s and a butcher block, and then under the table I keep the clay I use. So I have 2 different boxes, and I've got 2 different clay bodies, and then I've kind of got like a bin that sometimes I'll dump trimmings, wheel trimmings in or whatever. It's nice to have like a big container because it's I don't know, it's just handy. But moving on from the table, we're kind of going to the back wall of the studio, or I guess it's not really the back wall. It's kind of the back wall in a lot of my footage, but it's what I set up in the space. I really wanted to make sure that like this wall of the studio was kind of the most aesthetic. I knew it would kind of end up being the backdrop for a lot of filming, and it gets like really nice adjacent light from the big windows on the north side of my studio. So I've kind of set it up where the bottom half is cabinet storage and the top half is big rack storage. And then I also have a photo backdrop up there that I never really show, and I don't really use it. My thinking was if I had like really big work to photograph, I could use it as my backdrop, but for now it's a little underutilized, but one day I'll use it, I'm sure. But the wall hangers are these double brackets, double bracket wall hangers, and there's 2 vertical hangers per board, and then there's 3 total sets. So I could have lots of boards kind of all stacked up on that wall, and they're very securely installed. They are 32 inches apart. My studs in this studio are 16 center to center. So they're drilled, they're screwed into the studs, and they're very secure. You really want to make sure if you're going to install wall hangers that they're very well installed. I think I couldn't imagine anything worse than like a wall full of ceramic ware and it just rips off the wall. When I first moved into the studio, there's a heating pipe, and it was still pretty cold out, so the building was running the heat. And when the heating pipe kicks on in the building, it like makes that like horrendous knocking sound. And the first time I heard it, I thought my hangers were ripping off the wall, and it just like, it gave me a heart attack. But so far, it's been really good, and they've never, I put a lot of weight on them, and they're totally fine. When I installed them, I tested it by hanging my entire weight on one hanger, and it didn't budge. So I think it's okay. And then the cabinets I have installed below it, those are all from IKEA, and I've got 4 of them installed. And like the wall hangers, they are hung on the studs of the wall, so they are floating. There's nothing under them, which is it was really important to me, because for cleaning, I wanted to make sure I could easily mop and sweep under them, because if they had legs, you would basically never clean under them. And as far as like what's inside it, I don't really have a lot of, they're not super organized. I think I need to get more baskets. I have some stuff in them, but honestly, I think I'm underutilizing them a little bit, just because I don't have a lot of good baskets inside of them. So as we kind of like start to round that corner, we kind of get into like a part of my studio I don't quite show as much, and I'm still figuring out what to do with. I think I have a plan now, and maybe we'll do a video on it in the future, but I have like my plaques on that wall, and then a little bit to the right of it is the door to enter my studio. I really don't show this a lot on anything, just because it's just like the corner to enter my studio, and I haven't really done anything. I haven't done much with the corner. I want to do stuff with the corner, and I think I have a plan finally. I think I'm going to turn that corner into kind of like where I display my finished work, or like my series of works. I have that wall that I don't have anything on, and I think I'm going to install shelving, and I want to paint that whole kind of alcove a different color. I think it would be nice if it was like a little darker, maybe match like a green tone in my studio, and then I could have my finished work there to display. I think that would look good, but I haven't done that yet, so like maybe in the future I'll have to go and get some paint and do that. But I think it'd be a nice way to kind of give my studio entrance a little bit more of a solid feel. And then continuing into my studio from there. And honestly, what's kind of behind me right now is the wall where I have more storage, and it's where I've got a sink, and it's where I've got another bench, and then more shelves, and finally my kiln. The sink is actually not plumbed though. I think a lot of people see it and they think it's a real sink, and it is a real sink. It's a real sink, but it has it's like a camping sink in the sense that there's a reservoir up top that I have to refill, and there's a bucket down below, so it just drains right into the bucket, which honestly works really well for my studio, because clay, it can be tricky with clay and like sinks, and you have to make sure that you don't have like clay going down your sink. That would be very bad for your plumbing. So the camping sink actually works really well, and then I just have little baskets for storage. The sink itself is from IKEA, or like the sink, like the mini kitchen. I think it's like kind of sold as like a small kitchen, and I think it works really well actually in the studio, and I love it. It works good. I did my own kind of custom assembly for how it all went together. It's just a bunch of compression fittings and a 5-gallon jug that sits up top. And that's all. It doesn't use any batteries or anything, because that height difference gives it pretty good water pressure. And I use it mainly as like a hand washing sink, or maybe like a tool washing sink. If I have to really wash something, there's like sinks I can take stuff to. But also I just normally keep like a bucket around, it's like a pre-wash bucket, and then I'll just kind of do the final wash there. And it works good. And then the rest of it, we've just got little storage up and down, and there's not really too much going on there other than storage. But as you kind of keep going down the wall, you get to my kiln, and then my kiln, I've got my kiln shelves, and the kiln, I kind of keep it all in one area. I try to keep that all kind of close, because when I use the kiln, I want the kiln shelves to be close, and I can load up the kiln. And then under the kiln, I've got like a sheetrock kind of insulator for the floors, because I have wood floors. But the kiln is an L&L kiln. I really like the kiln. This isn't an endorsement of L&L, but it is a good kiln, and I do like it. I'm really happy with it. L&L's kind of like 2 claims to fame, or at least like what they sell you on, is inside it's got 3 thermocouples. A lot of kiln just has 1, so it kind of has like zone control when you fire. And then it also has kind of these channels that your heating elements sit in, instead of just being held in with pins. So it's a lot easier to replace your heating elements. And I think the kiln longevity is just a little better as opposed to other kilns. But that's just like their business talking points. I like the kiln a lot. I have nothing bad to say about it. It's a good kiln, but whatever kiln makes sense for you, if you're trying to like pick your kiln for your studio, do your own research, because everyone's got slightly different needs. But that's kind of mostly the wall. The thing I haven't really talked about yet is the second work table. So there's a second work table, and I constructed it a really similar way to the table I'm sitting on. It's a butcher block that I got at Menards, and other than that, it's just a 2x4 assembly that runs around the table. It's kind of turned into my slip casting table, so I use it to slip cast, and I've got a slip cast. I use porcelain, so I have my porcelain slip I store it under the table, and then on top of the table I've got funnels, banding wheels, little squirt bottles for my different colored porcelains, and then different colorants to dye the porcelain. And then next to the kiln I've got another rack of storage, and basically I keep my kiln shelf furniture, and then I also keep my gloves, because when you unload the kiln, sometimes the work in it is hot. And the kiln, I try to make sure that where the kiln is set up, it's got enough space around it. So there's kind of this bubble of space around the kiln where I don't have a lot of stuff, just because I want the kiln to not light my studio on fire. And then I also have just some kind of seconds. I don't know what to do with the stuff I don't want to sell, but I don't want to get rid of it. So I feel like it's kind of just hidden all over my studio, and I just have to figure out, maybe one day I'll do a second sale or something. But so that's kind of that area. And then next to it we've got another shelving system that's on the other side of my kiln, and next to my south facing window. I don't really film this part of the studio very much, just because it's really bright like all the time over here because it's like a south facing window, so it's really hard to video that corner because it gets like really blown out. But I've got buckets for reclaim. Since I've got different clay bodies, I keep different buckets to put dry clay in the different like clay bodies. Each have their own bucket, and basically it's just a really simple reclaim system. When I have enough dry clay, I basically fill up the bucket with water until it slakes down. I use a paddle mixer to try to make it as uniform as possible, and then I spread it out on plaster bats. So I have it's just a simple cinder block construction with some basically 1 inch by 8 inch boards over there. I'm eventually going to do something more like put together, but maybe we'll do like a video on kind of updating that corner. And then that's really it. I got glaze over there as well, but none of that's really it's just like material storage. And then the other little corner is where my computer is. And then, way back in the corner of the studio, I already kind of showed it with the curtains, but that's where I kind of have bulk storage of packing supplies or shipping boxes, packing peanuts. I want to formalize that with actual shelves. Right now it's all kind of stacked on top of each other, and it's not like a good system, and I kind of hate it when I need anything from there because I have to take it all out, and then it's not a good system. But yeah, that's the computer I edit on. It's not very fancy. It's just a little Mac Mini and my speakers, and that's kind of all I've got. I got pens. I take notes. I've got little notebooks that I doodle in. I'm trying to be better about being more organized with my schedule. Sometimes I'm very scattered. I feel like I try to do too much sometimes, and then it gets overwhelming. But my desk at least isn't a total disaster. I've got my label printer for my shipping boxes, and I have a fun little audio setup. I've got some speakers and a big sub and a nice DAC, which is a digital to analog converter, which I plug into my computer. I always think it's nice, the first thing I want to set up in a studio is a really good stereo, because I listen to a lot of music, so it's nice to have a nice, some good speakers. It's a nice thing. But that's kind of my whole studio. We went through the throwing, we went through the wall storage, I showed you the kilns, my work tables, how I have my sink set up, and then kind of my reclaim area and my bulk storage with the curtains, and then the diffuse lighting, and yeah, that's everything. So that's my studio. I'm here. I probably spend way too much time here, but I really like the space, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy to be here and to be able to do this. So I hope you liked watching. If you did, don't forget to leave a like. And if you've got any questions I didn't get to or something I glossed over, ask in the comments. I will try to answer all of the questions the best I can. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.